Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan ending explained in detail. When Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan hit theaters in 1982, it not only resurrected the Star Trek film franchise after the polarizing reception of the motion picture, but it also delivered one of the most emotional, shocking, and thematically resonant endings in science fiction cinema. The final act, defined by Captain Kirk and Khan Noonien Singh's battle of wits and culminating in the death of Spock, has lived on as one of the franchise's defining moments. But what exactly makes the ending of The Wrath of Khan so powerful? Why did Spock's sacrifice feel both devastating and inevitable? And how does the finale connect to the themes of aging, friendship, revenge, and the larger Star Trek mythos? Let's break down the ending of Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan in detail. The final confrontation with Khan. By the climax of the film, Khan Ricardo Montalbot, the genetically engineered superhuman first introduced in the original series episode Space Seed, has been consumed entirely by vengeance. Having escaped his exile on Ceti Alpha V, Khan's obsession with avenging his wife's death and punishing Admiral James T. Kirk has driven him into a one-track crusade. The battle culminates in the Mutora Nebula, where long-range sensors and shields are rendered useless, forcing both Khan's hijacked USS Reliant and Kirk's USS Enterprise into a deadly cat-and-mouse chase. It's an environment that favors strategy and improvisation over raw power, perfect for a Starfleet captain who thrives on cunning tactics. Kirk exploits Khan's rigidity and inexperience with three-dimensional starship combat. While Khan thinks tactically in a two-dimensional naval fashion, Kirk maneuvers in three dimensions, catching Khan off guard and crippling the Reliant. Mortally wounded, Khan enacts one last act of vengeance, activating the Genesis device, a powerful terraforming bomb that will obliterate both ships in its blast radius. This sets the stage for Spock's fateful choice: Spock's sacrifice. When the Enterprise's warp engines are damaged and the countdown to the Genesis explosion begins, it seems the crew is doomed. Scotty cannot repair the engines in time. The Enterprise can limp away at impulse, but not fast enough to escape the detonation. That's when Spock makes his decision. Without hesitation, Spock enters the engine room, exposing himself to lethal radiation in order to repair the warp drive. He knows that only he can make the necessary adjustments quickly enough, and that doing so will cost him his life. As the Genesis device explodes, the Enterprise warps to safety, saved by Spock's selflessness. This act is not just about logic, it's about love and loyalty. Spock frames his sacrifice with the Vulcan philosophy: greater than, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, or the one. For Spock, this is the ultimate logical decision. But for the audience, it is profoundly emotional because it's also the ultimate act of friendship. Kirk and Spock's final goodbye. The most unforgettable moment of the film comes in Spock's farewell. Trapped behind the radiation-shielded glass of the engine room, Kirk watches helplessly as his best friend collapses. Their final conversation is brief but devastating. Spock, blinded and weakened, straightens his uniform, regains composure, and approaches the glass. In his last moments, he demonstrates Vulcan dignity, but also his humanity. He reassures Kirk, reminding him not of loss, but of their bond. Greater than, I have been and always shall be your friend. The image of Kirk pressing his hand to the glass as Spock mirrors it from the other side is etched into Star Trek history. The scene resonates because it's not just a death, it's a culmination of decades of friendship, from their original 5-year mission through all their adventures. Spock's sacrifice is both heroic and deeply personal. Themes of aging and mortality. What makes Spock's death hit harder is how it connects with the broader themes of The Wrath of Khan. Throughout the film, Kirk struggles with aging, obsolescence, and regret. He feels out of place as an admiral, longing for his days of command, but also haunted by past decisions. His interactions with Carol Marcus and his son David force him to reflect on choices he made decades earlier. The death of Spock, Kirk's closest friend, symbolizes the inevitable confrontation with mortality that the film builds toward. As Kirk himself admits later, greater than, of all the souls I have encountered in my travels, his was the most human. In that moment, Kirk finally understands not just loss, but the meaning of life and friendship. The man who once feared aging now realizes that death gives life its weight. Khan's downfall. The consequences of obsession. On the other side of the equation is Khan. His death mirrors the consequences of unchecked obsession and rage. While Spock dies selflessly, Khan dies consumed by vengeance. He paraphrases Moby Dick's Captain Ahab with his final words. Greater than, from hell's heart, I stab at thee. For hate's sake, I spit my last breath at thee. Just like Ahab, Khan is destroyed not by his enemy, but by his inability to let go of hatred. His genius and strength are wasted on revenge, contrasting sharply with Spock's sacrifice for the greater good. This juxtaposition between Khan and Spock is the moral fulcrum of the film, selfish destruction versus selfless salvation. The genesis of rebirth. Though Spock's death feels final, the ending also plants the seeds of hope and renewal. The Genesis device, though destructive in its detonation, creates new life from barren matter. In the closing scenes, we see the newly formed Genesis planet, a world born from tragedy. This symbolism is echoed in Kirk's closing reflection. After mourning Spock, he admits that instead of feeling old and weary, he feels young. Spock's sacrifice has given Kirk a new perspective. He has rediscovered purpose, vitality, and appreciation for life. Thematically, the ending is about transformation. Just as the Genesis device reshapes matter into something new, Kirk's grief reshapes him into a better, more complete man. The funeral, a hero's send-off. Spock's funeral aboard the Enterprise provides the emotional catharsis the story needs. His coffin, launched into space, becomes a symbolic torpedo of honor. The crew listens as Kirk delivers one of the most moving eulogies in science fiction history. Accompanied by the swelling strains of James Horner's haunting score, Spock's casket is sent into the newly formed Genesis planet's orbit. The visuals suggest both finality and the possibility of new beginnings. The choice to end not in despair, but in a note of cosmic beauty, ensures the audience leaves the theater with a bittersweet sense of hope. The final narration. The last lines of The Wrath of Khan cement its thematic resonance. Leonard Nimoy himself provides the closing narration, echoing the original opening of Star Trek. Greater than space, the final frontier. These are the continuing voyages of the Starship Enterprise. Her ongoing mission, to seek out new life forms and new civilizations, to boldly go where no man has gone before. By having Spock's voice deliver this narration, the film reminds us that even though he is gone, his presence and ideals endure. The legacy of Spock continues in the mission of the Enterprise and in the hearts of his friends. How the ending reshaped Star Trek. The ending of The Wrath of Khan had massive repercussions for Star Trek as a franchise. Initially, Spock's death was meant to be permanent, a bold creative choice to add weight to the film. However, the popularity of the character and the outpouring of fan reaction led to his resurrection in Star Trek III: The Search for Spock. Even so, the power of his death in The Wrath of Khan remains untouched. Later films, including The Voyage Home and The Undiscovered Country, build on the themes of aging, mortality, and